Hi everybody, today we're going to learn how to draw from the point of view of eye level. So the first step we're going to need to do is we're going to draw our horizon line pretty much in the center of the page. The horizon line is where we are looking at, so straight out into the horizon line. And then we're going to start adding some details. So eye level means looking straight on. So the details we're going to add, I'm going to do a desert scene today. So it will be a cactus to begin with. And so for a cactus, I'm going to go ahead and start with the center area. And then I'm going to add a branch here or a limb. Kind of always cactuses feel like they have limbs. I feel like he should have 3, so I'm going to take this down a little bit lower. Bring this up, down, in, and down. I'm going to erase the horizon line out of the center of my cactus. I'm using a mechanical pencil, but you can use a regular pencil. And then this is just a small Ticonderoga golf pencil. I like the short ones. I don't know, I just prefer the short pencils. So to make this look cactus-like, I'm going to add some texture. And the texture is going to simply be really straight, narrow lines that parallel the edges. I might have them start merging a little bit. After a while, your eye won't really realize that they've merged because you'll add so many other lines. We can always go in and add more lines. And cactuses are so fun to draw. You could just look at photo references. Today I'm looking at a picture I drew a while back while I'm drawing this one. But when I'm using photo references for any drawing or painting, I like to have at least 3. That way I'm not tempted to copy. It becomes my own work if I start to integrate at least 3 different references. Like, there's nothing wrong with referring to things when you're drawing them. You want to know, you want to draw them properly, unless it's like out of your imagination and you just are using your own imagination to create a style or a look. But you just don't want to copy things completely because that's not your own work. When you're doing little exercises like this, it's totally fine. You're building your visual library. But when you're starting to break off into your own assignment, like say I said, draw some eye level, draw something at eye level, incorporating a tree or any type of tree. It could be a cactus, it could be a pine tree or oak tree, some mountains, an animal, and something in the sky. Then you would come up with your own ideas, creating something fun. So I'm going to create this thorns now. So I'm just make 3, sometimes less, sometimes never more really. And this is going to create that illusion of spiky. It does help to have a sharp pencil for this particular plant, for this cactus plant. And I try to have them maybe at least touching a line. And of course coming off of it, that way you're breaking out of the tree and or the cactus, and so it's not so confined. And then just look for areas that look a little bit empty, that need a little more texture. Okay, so there's a cactus. And then some other things. We can add some mountains in the background. Just some, I just like to do wiggly triangles. A little bit of shading or texture. And then maybe we can drop them forward a little bit into this area so it doesn't, so you start hiding that horizon line. It's not so obvious. If we're using color, we could use atmospheric perspective and add a little bit of bluing towards the mountains. That would make it look farther away. And then I'm going to add a fault line, and we'll do a fun trick of creating the illusion of something going straight down. So I'm going to just, I use this same strategy for making a stream, but since we're in the desert, we don't want it to go straight down. So maybe you have something coming here off of that turn. We can turn it and then wiggle it, and we'll create a parallel line that gets wider, parallel-ish. And then to make this look like going straight down into the ground, you want to add these vertical lines going down. So that's going to help it feel as if it's going straight down. When you come off the edges, okay, it's nice to come off of these corners here. So if you actually wanted to just drop these lines down, it's going to give you that illusion as well of having a crevice or a crevasse. I don't know, people say it differently. You can always add a little shading. And as you get closer, perhaps, or if it gets closer to you, your lines get a little bit farther apart. I might just shade right here. Shade or press hard here. Give it a little more depth. And towards the bottom. Or maybe there is no bottom, because bottomless. And I'll soften the top edge a little bit, just so that if I didn't get my lines perfect, it hides that. This area looks like it should be pretty dark. Okay, and we can add a few animals, maybe some boulders. So one thing that you often see in the desert is a skull. It's usually a cow skull. Maybe some poor cow just got lost out there, wandered away from the water source and couldn't find his way back. So I'm just going to try to, there's not really any perfect way to start, but you know it has some horns, so I wanted to make sure I had enough space to add the horns without erasing too much of my cactus. I don't want it to look like a puppy or anything like that because it's not. We're just going back to the bones. The bones give our body structure, and any animal structure who has bones. Not every animal has bones. Like a shark has cartilage, but it still gives its body structure. Other tiny, like single-cell organisms don't have bones at all. They're just goo, fat cells, all different things. So I'm going to create a bit of a sharp pointed nose. I want it to be pointing a bit off or towards the edge of the paper, so that brings my viewer's eye up. So this whole line up into the cactus. And usually the nose is a little bit jagged. Maybe it's had a rough time since it lost, you know, the rest of itself, and only the bones are left. And horns are interesting because they are actually part of an animal. As where an antler on a deer will fall off annually, a horn is growing out of a cow's head or any animal who has a horn. So it is part of their body. And this is helping to frame this edge. I don't want it to pull the viewer's eye out of the page either, so I might need to bring something over here to pull it back in so that it drives back up that way. Making an eye socket. An area that could have possibly had the nasal cavity, maybe a crack coming out, and a few like seams. Add a little shading just to make it interesting. We won't want any of this floating. I'll add some dimension to that too. And this looks a little rounded. It needs to be a little pointier. It's like a rounded point for, and like some cows have huge horns, like the Texas Longhorns. I don't even know how they hold them up. A little shading towards the bottom. We have to figure out where our light source is coming from. These are going straight down. This is a little shadowy. So perhaps the sun is coming in right here. So then I'll add some shadows this way. So our cow skull, our cactus, our mountains, and our fault line. We have our shading coming in with the skull. We don't have any shading here yet. I was going to add a rattlesnake. He's curled up over here. Rattlesnakes have a diamond shape, and most vipers do. They need this area for the poison sacs. So you know a snake is poisonous if it has a diamond-shaped head. A gopher snake will look similar to a rattlesnake, except its head is more rounded. But when in doubt, just don't touch it. Just leave it alone. You don't want to mess with them. So I'm going to create a bit of a spiral shape. And I might have to come in and adjust this, and that's okay. He's curled up here. underneath the tree. Bring his tail up. He's not happy, so don't touch him. He's got his rattles. Rattles are from the different years of the age of the rattlesnake. So as it sheds its skin, it adds another rattle. I think its head needs to come a little more forward. I used to work on trail crew, and one time I was hiking out near Hetch Hetchy in Yosemite, and a rattlesnake was like, or a snake, I don't know if it was a rattlesnake, but it was scary, lifted its head, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was very frightening. But it didn't bite me, and we all went back. We just like went our own ways, like, no thank you, bye snake. Okay, so here's the rattle. Kind of pieced in there. This is a pretty small drawing, so we can't do too much. I'm gonna give it, not a scary face, give it some eyes. His nose, and then his tongue. He's tasting the air to see if there's any threats coming. He feels some vibration or something he's not happy about, so that is why he is ready to go, ready to strike. He's rattling his tail. So he's a diamondback. So he's gonna have diamonds as his pattern. Okay, and then usually the belly of the snake is a little bit scaly, different pattern than this. I think I'm gonna have to shade these areas in to make that a possibility. So it's a little bit lighter. I'm not very perfect about shapes. It's just my, I don't know, my impatientness about it. So if you want to be perfect, that's up to you. So I'll have a little bit of light belly. Shading around the edges. Have those diamonds stand out. And maybe it'll just blend to like a lighter color for the head. And then it's hard to get that center here looking quite right. Okay, close enough. All right, it's only one small feature of this whole drawing. You could also have like a scorpion. Those things aren't very pleasant. So what we'll do is, it's kind of getting a little crowded here, but you know what? It's okay. Maybe we'll just have our scorpion going this direction to bring the viewer's eye over. And so it's going to be simplified. He's got his little claws. He's got his head, other claws right here. Keep it kind of small. And then his poisonous thing. And then some legs. And I think they have 3 or 6, but maybe they have 8. I don't know. And then a little, I think that's good. That's plenty of stuff. I could add a mouse if I felt like it. And I have in the past. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of shading and shape these areas first. So that way I can see how crowded it is before I add any other little animals. So I'm gonna add a little bit of a rock here, and I switched pencils because it's too hard to shade with a mechanical pencil, and I want to be able to work a little bit faster. And I shake the snake a little bit of a shadow. I don't want to take away the area in which I can see the details, so I'll lighten it up around there. We decided that the shadows are coming this way, so the snake will cast a bit of a shadow. And so will the cactus over this direction. If the sun's coming here, it might go like towards the front. And maybe it's too hot for the snake to be out in the direct sunlight, so he's like hanging out in the shade, waiting for something to eat. And then over here, I'm going to start pulling the edge of the vault over. And I'm going horizontal on purpose. That's going to help to highlight that there's this gorge down here. And then we can smudge it a bit. Of course, if you want this to be archival, you want to use something other than your finger, but for just a practice, this is fine. And then we can always pull the white back in to add texture or making things more interesting with your eraser. And let's see, darken, add a little more interesting lines. I always like to use a little bit of squiggly lines, I don't know. And then we'll have to add a little bit over here as well. The tough part about grayscale is sometimes it's hard to keep everything standing out, so you have to pull whites as you can, but without them looking like they're mistakes. So you bring them out, you blend them back in, bring them out, blend them back in. Okay, we'll just go with that for now. And then I'm going to have some vultures in the sky. And what's super cool about vultures is that they fly on thermals. And so they're spirals. So I'm going to go ahead and do a spiral. And I think I'm going to loop it, not like a hurricane. I'm going to try to loop it down, which is a little bit awkward, but it's going to go down, 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 down. And I don't really want it to touch anything, but it's just a guide, and it's a way of making something like visible that you can't actually see. A thermal is a hot air that is easy for birds with large wings to soar on. So as like vultures are designed for soaring, they don't like to flap their wings. It's very tiring for them. And a lot of other birds are like that as well. So I'm just going to give the idea of this. This would take a lot of research to do properly, but it's always something that I thought would be really interesting to paint, is birds riding a thermal without the spiral line. And they usually are kind of thick in there. So we're just getting the idea right now. Kind of, sometimes drawings like this are a way to capture an idea that you want to do later in more detail. So this one, I'm going to just kind of add like the idea. I'm not going to add like a sun, like the smiley face kind of sun. I'm going to add the idea of a sun. It's a hot sun, so I'm going to add like the heat raying off of it, going towards the vultures. You could have like blue sky, or if you're using color, or you could have it be a white hot sky. It just depends what you think would be the best thing. And then a bit of shading. And then I think just for the sake of drawing it, we'll add a little bit of a mouse, and it's not going to be super detailed. It's just so that you can see what they look like. So when you're drawing little animals, you don't want this, I mean, the mouse is real close to the snake, so you don't want him to get eaten. But, so maybe we'll have him hiding back here behind, and we'll make him pretty small. So we're going to start with the body. And he's got a pointy head. You can see the hip here. It's easier to draw the other direction. Let's see, I'll do it this way. Right. Big rounded back. Pointy little face. And you could change this into like a little duckling and stuff too. But it's not. So then you got kind of like a kangaroo mouse style with its nice big hip, little hands, big ears, and then a long tail. Pointy nose. And he's like, oh my gosh, there's a snake. So maybe he doesn't see it and the snake doesn't see him. There's like a bit of a rock separating the two of them to keep the mouse safe. And the snake's just mad at something that we can't see. It's out of the image, maybe at us. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed drawing this view of the desert at eye level, and hope you just keep on drawing. Thanks for drawing with me today. Bye.